When you think of a motorcycle, you think freedom, you think fearlessness, you think speed. This wasn't always the case though. It took time to get where they are today, and without the influence of three northern Italian brothers, they might have never gotten there. These brothers share a name that may sound familiar to you, Ducati. It was in 1926 that the Ducati brothers unknowingly took the first step towards molding motorcycles into what we know them as today. But in 2018, their near century of heritage culminated into their flagship vehicle, a manifestation of balance, performance, and power in synergy without foregoing sophistication. The ultimate sports bike, arguably the best of all time, Ducati's magnum opus. I'm talking, of course, about the Ducati Panigale V4. They may be gigantic now, but Ducati wasn't always the motorcycle monolith they are today. In fact, in their beginnings, they had nothing to do with motorcycles at all. As mentioned, their inception traces to 1926, a year chock full of happenings, big and small. Al Capone is running wild in Chicago. Winnie the Pooh has just hit the shelves for the first time and sat together in a small cafe in Bologna, Italy. The Ducati brothers prepare to launch their creatively named company. Their focus lay not on motorcycles or even vehicles at all, but rather on electrical components. Specifically, radio. This focus stemmed from the genius of one of the brothers, Adriano Ducati. He had achieved fame thanks to his success in connecting Italy and the United States by radio with the shortwave device that he himself had fashioned. This fame was such that it brought the Ducati name into the limelight, propelling their enterprise forward. And this enterprise flourished, employing thousands within the next decade. But after that first decade of success came one of turmoil, specifically that of World War II. During the war, their factories were targeted by Allied bombardments. Their status and success had set a target upon them. On the 12th of October, 1944, their main facility in Bologna was destroyed, taking with it the company's current direction. Out of these ashes, though, they would resurge, a roaring phoenix, with ardent excellence, the likes of which would come to be felt unquestionably through everything carrying its name. With this resurgence came the beginning of the Ducati brand as we know it today. A mere 2 years later, in 1946, with the help of the Italian government, Ducati introduced their very first engine, a 50cc named the Cucciolo, Italian for the puppy. And yep, you heard me right, not a motorcycle, but an engine. Designed by Aldo Farinelli, the Cucciolo allowed one to motorize their own bicycle. These micro-engines were a solution to the newfound need for mobility of the average Italian citizen at the time, created by their growing affluence during the post-war economic boom in Italy. By 1950, 200,000 Cucciolos had been sold, and with this popularity came innovation. Independent businessmen had begun buying the engines in bulk, pre-constructing motorized bicycle units and turning them over for a profit. This prompted Ducati to cut out the middleman and take matters into their own hands. And so, the first Ducati motorcycle was born, packing a 48cc engine at a weight just shy of 100 pounds and a top speed of 40 miles per hour. The 55M was the first of its kind, but as Italians took to racing these bikes in the streets, mobility alone quickly became insufficient. People wanted speed, that lust for velocity, that desire to zip down the streets past roaring crowds and cheering girls, leaving your opponent in the dust. That is what truly began to mold the Ducati brand into what it is today. Thus, in 1952, Ducati began efforts toward upping their game and meeting this newfound demand. These efforts, however, wouldn't pay off for quite some time. First to hit the scene of their beefier models was the Ducati 175 Cruiser. It left an impression, noted as the most interesting new machine at the show where it was displayed. Sadly though, interesting isn't enough of an eye-catcher. These attempts would continue throughout the early 50s with little success. Undeterred, this prompted the company to split in 1953. The separation saw the motorcycle-focused portion of the company diverge from the electronic side, allowing the pursuit of their automobilist endeavors more aggressively than ever. And with that aggression came the incorporation of another important name into the business, Fabio Taglioni. Fabio hit the ground running, spearheading multiple projects within Ducati and bringing forth several new motorcycles, each of which proved a step up over the last. It was his refinement of the desmodromic valve operating system and its subsequent incorporation into the 100cc GS model that allowed Gianni Degliantini to claim victory in the 1955 MotoGP d'Italia. This victory would set the tone for the years to come and mark the beginning of a new era of ascent for Ducati. Because this victory may have been the first, but it wasn't the last. In 1956, Ducati entered the 125cc category in that year's Grand Prix, again with Gianni at the helm. This step up was nothing to scoff at, setting Gianni up to test the limits of Ducati's latest model against a whole new caliber of competition. These were the biggest names in the industry at the time: MV Agusta, Mondial, Gilera, the German DKW, and the young Spanish brand Montesa. More importantly though, Gianni would be facing off against the Swedish national champion, Ole Nygren. The odds were fierce, and Gianni, having a reputation to withhold, was determined but nervous. That nervousness, however, would soon be replaced with catharsis. On that fateful 14th of July, Gianni absolutely blew the competition out of the water, tearing past the finish line with the thunderous 3-second lead on the former champion. This win cemented Gianni as the apex of the sport, unsurpassed and unparalleled by his supposed competition. More importantly though, it served as further proof that Ducati's superior engineering could be overlooked no longer. Ducati was no longer just some player in the game. An automotive behemoth had been born. This newfound domination would continue for the rest of the decade, priming them for what would prove to be the beginning of a new era. Enter the 1960s. This time was a dramatic era, to say the least. The development of computers, the space race, the explosion of creativity through rock music and Hollywood. These were times of new freedoms, transgressions, and battles for ideals. To top all this off, the mass production of cars distanced motorcycles even further from their original role in mobility and social connection. This perfect storm of circumstances pushed motorcycles into a new light. They became a form of expression, beginning to represent intrepid freedom as they do today. And following the lead of American biker culture, they became something further still, a companion for life on the road. Ducati, unsurprisingly, was ahead of the curve. In 1961, the Ducati Scrambler was released, largely catering to American importers. And this development continued through the 60s, as Ducati continued to pump out innovative model after innovative model, ranging from the Mark III series, which included 250, 350, and 450cc engines, to the Mach 1 250cc, which carried a rarer 5-speed transmission and was the fastest 250cc bike available at the time. They even updated the Scrambler with new 250 and 350cc engines towards the end of the decade. Ducati was putting in work. The best, though, was yet to come. On top of all this, they rolled out the 450cc single, the first ever motorcycle available to the public with desmodromic valve actuation and top speeds of an eye-watering 170 kilometers per hour. Such a decade of monumental achievement may seem enough to prop up a legacy, but it was in fact merely laying the stage for the real legwork in the decade to come. In 1970, Fabio Taglioni grafted two top-end 250cc's together to create a 90-degree V-twin 500cc engine. This engine became the onset of the L-twin engine from Ducati and would become a staple in Ducati's works until very recently, thanks to a certain flagship trailblazer rhyming with Panigale. But we'll get to that later. Now, this did lead to a slight hiccup with the Ducati 750 GT due to some electrical issues with the bike, but a hiccup is as far as it got. Less than a year later, they introduced the desmodromic version of the 750 GT, which would proceed to snatch up the victory at the Imola 200-mile race. Piloted by Paul Smart, this biker-bike duo demonstrated a staggering 80 horsepower at 8,500 RPMs. This win cemented L-twin engines as the foundation upon which Ducati's future projects would be built moving forward. These two wins were the most meaningful, but by no means the only ones to be spoken of. Throughout the rest of the 70s and into the 80s, Ducati continued to tear through the competition. Win after win, they continued to improve. The bikes got faster, smarter, and more sought after than ever. Between these successive sports wins and the advent of maxi motorcycles driving them further towards the image of a fun object in the public eye, they now carried that connotation of fearlessness and freedom that persist until today. All was set up for this streak of wins and successes to continue forward, but in 1983, Ducati was faced with a change. The company was bought out by the Leone family and merged with the Cagiva group. This was a risky move and could possibly cause Ducati to lose its momentum. Did Ducati find itself on the losing end of the risk? No. In fact, quite the opposite. The Cagiva merger strengthened the involvement of the company in motorsports. Championship titles weren't the only thing of note for Ducati in the 90s, though. During this decade, the Texas Pacific Group bought an initial 49% of the company and scooped up the following 51% shortly after. In 1999, however, they made the company public and sold 65% of their share in the IPO. Now, going public can be daunting for some companies, and again, when it came to internal affairs, this posed a degree of risk, but Ducati was on a lucky streak when it came to risky scenarios, and this was no exception. The new management of the company kept their win streak going, even making the new Monster Dark model the best-selling motorcycle in Italy for both 1998 and 1999. Between the Monster and the 916, the theme of art meeting motorcycle was made evident, and Ducati led the way. This streak couldn't last forever though, and hit a bit of a bump in the road, ending the millennium and starting the new one on somewhat of a low note. To usher in the end of the year, Ducati released the 999 model, which sadly did not bring the bang that was hoped. Despite its desmodromic double camshaft, L-twin cylinder engine, and overall lightweight design, the 916 had simply left shoes too big to fill. Come 2002, once the reviews came pouring in, all people could really say was, it's not the 916. This was about as much of a dip as Ducati would face though, as in 2003, thanks to Hodgson scooping up yet another World Superbike Championship for Ducati, they were back on track. Had us worried for a second there, lest this be seen as a one-off victory, they made sure to cement their reignition in 2007 by both winning their first Premier League title ever. Not only that, but in 2007, Ducati also released the 1098, the first motorcycle in nearly 10 years to satisfy the die-hard fans, a true successor to the 916. And things calmed down for a while after that. For almost a full 5 years, not much terribly noteworthy happened. New models were released and well received, but none overcame the 1098. New drivers came and went, as did old ones, with the odd title here and there, lest the streak be broken. All seemed a tad more relaxed, but of course, that wouldn't last for long. Come 2011, the first step towards their masterpiece would be taken, the original iteration of what would eventually be perfected into the aforementioned magnum opus. The primordial Panigale had finally come to be. What's so special about the Panigale, you ask? Well, not much, at this stage at least, except for being the most powerful twin-cylinder to date. And I don't say that as a tongue-in-cheek remark, it just gets better. One thing that is worthy of remark, though, is the praise it received, as did the 899 that followed it, and the 959 after that. As the years pass, we work our way through the next couple generations, with both the 1199 and 1299 receiving equivalent commendations and performing expectantly well, but they now pale in comparison to the pride and joy of Ducati, the last step in the evolution of the Panigale line. In 2018, Ducati graced the scene with what is considered by many their best bike ever, and since. You can even drop the there. Some argue that it's outright the best sports bike ever made, and it's not hard to see why. Its aerodynamics, now more compact and efficient, boasting double-profile designed wings and redesigned extraction sockets, improving further still upon the cooling system while leaving its beauty untouched. Its engine, packing 215.5 horsepower, an SBK gearbox, and an optimized torque management system, ensuring the rider can always achieve optimum thrust when opening the throttle, as well as rotating in the opposite direction of the wheels in order to minimize the gyroscopic effect. The chassis, adopting an Öhlins NPX 25x30 pressurized fork, which in turn results in better braking support and at the same time great absorption of road bumps. Electronics with top-tier Evo 2 software that improves stability, precision, and directionality. Even the ergonomics were reworked to minimize the effort required to ride the bike, ensuring a smoother experience for the rider. And all of this elegantly packed within an aggressively flavorful redesign. It's not hard to understand why the Panigale V4 and its variants, such as the V4S and V4R, are held in such high regard. But talk is cheap. It's time to take a look at them in action. As you can see, the Panigale is a force to be reckoned with, its power and elegance speaking for themselves. A masterpiece like this doesn't just happen by accident. There was a team behind it, out on a mission to produce the single best work of art that Ducati had put forward yet, a goal which we can comfortably say they achieved. This success, however, was no cakewalk. It took years of development, grit, and raw dedication to bring this beast to life, and an amount of work that often goes unsung. Those behind it are visionaries, and spearheading their efforts was the director of the project, Stefano Strapazzone. In a 2017 interview, shortly before the bike became widely available, he spoke with MCN about the team's development goals, their pride in the project, and their satisfaction with the end result. If you jump on it with your eyes closed, you can say this is a Ducati, he told the interviewer, in reference to how they had maintained Ducati's signature elements and tradition, all while continuing to improve upon prior elements. The same V4 engine base from the Desmo Sedici RR, but tightened in terms of power and efficiency. The first full production VR. The same firing order as the MotoGP, despite its improvements, retaining similar behavior and sound, holding on to its V-twin soul. A bike built for both the race and the road, with a team of 5 designers, led by Julien Clement, as well as GP guys such as Michel Pirro and Casey Stone, putting their heart and soul into the project. Stefano concluded the interview with a simple yet telling statement. It's a very good balance of everything. A bike that has incredible performance, but at the same time is easy to ride by everybody. And he's exactly right. It's not a bike tailored solely to elitists, nor something merely for laymen. It's a vehicle that achieves greatness while avoiding inaccessibility, a taste of perfection that anyone can enjoy. This achievement does not go unrecognized either. The Panigale's list of awards and accolades is extensive, and rightfully so. The Panigale V4 was awarded Most Beautiful Bike of the Show at EICMA 2017, decided by popular vote rather than judge panel, and securing Ducati's 9th win in a row. It also earned the Auto Trader's Best Bike of the Year award in the UK, besting 36 other models from 16 other manufacturers, as well as topping out the sports bike category, earning Best Sports Bike as well. It even won the prestigious GQ Best Car of the Year award, leading to a bit of semantic confusion. Deemed the best thing on 2 wheels in 2019, the GQ Car Awards deemed it worthy of the #1 spot on their list. Tim Maccabee, the managing director of Ducati's UK division, stated, "It is great to see the Panigale V4R win such a prestigious award, and an honor for it to be recognized by GQ as the best motorcycle of 2019, because that's exactly what it is. The best bike of those preceding it, the best of its year, and, so far, arguably the best since." Yeah, plenty of bikes have been rolled out since the V4 hit the scene, but for now, none dethrone it. It may perhaps be another case similar to the 916, simply waiting on its successor. Or it might just not have one, leading Ducati to pursue a different direction in their improvements as they have in the past, leaving the Panigale name unperturbed. Undoubtedly, though, Ducati will continue as it has been, growing, innovating, inspiring. But first and foremost, they'll uphold their commitment to greatness, on and off the track. This has been Ducati's story until now, but it's far from over, and I, personally, am excited for what's to come.